the American people stand firm in the faith which has inspired this nation from the beginning. We believe that all men have a right to equal justice under law and equal opportunity to share in the common good. We believe that all men have the right to freedom of thought and expression. We believe that all men are created equal because they are created in the image of God. From this faith, we will not be moved.
Hello, and welcome to the Freedom of Thought podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Freedom of Thought is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps. I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today. As on today's episode, I'd like to believe this is something, well, this is something special. This is a special episode of Freedom of Thought, and in a lot of ways, this is what Freedom of Thought is all about, to discuss things, to bring out information that might not be really talked about elsewhere. Now, you might think when you look at the title of this episode regarding O.J. Simpson and the O.J. case, you're thinking, oh, brother, O.J. case again? Oh, he's going to tell us how O.J.'s guilty. Well, yeah, he is guilty. It's obvious. He's the most guilty person ever. Or he's going to think that he's not guilty. He was set up by this person or that person. Well, judge for yourself as for how things are going to come out. But in this case, I believe up to anywhere from 90 to 99% of you have ever heard this information that I'm about to talk about here on Freedom of Thought. And it is pretty much all thanks to William Deere, private investigator coming in out of Texas, writing a few books and doing some documentaries and such over the years, dating back to right about the week of the murders, the week after the murders and such is when he really started to dive into it. A well-renowned private investigator, now unfortunately already 86 years old, and his information continues to be dismissed by the LAPD and the district attorney and all that in California because, well, they all just were convinced that it is what it is and this and that, and OJ's a free man and this and that. But it's not about getting OJ. And, of course, what really triggered this conversation here today is, unfortunately, the death of O.J. Simpson that took place just a couple of days ago here. O.J. Simpson passing away at age 76 due to prostate cancer. This is something I've been wanting to get into a very, very, very long time, possibly in podcast form. I've been podcasting since 2008, January 28, 2008, I've been podcasting. And pretty much ever since then, it was like someday on some form of a podcast, I would like to talk about O.J. Simpson and the O.J. Simpson case. Not so much O.J. Simpson himself, but the O.J. case and what so many pieces of information never truly get brought to light because they're either covered up or dismissed so quickly by people because, okay, it's obvious O.J. was guilty, blah, 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 and it all became a kind of a pissing match between, like the whole race wars that started dating back to Rodney King and kept getting magnified deeper and deeper, starting with Clinton, maybe a little bit with Bush, blown to smithereens with Obama, and then by the time Trump got in office, automatically Everybody looked at him as a bad person or whatever, when in reality, all he wanted was secure borders and America First policies. But I'm not really here to talk about Obama or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton. Though Bill Clinton was the president during the time of during all this time, of course, Rodney King, that was George H.W. Bush, and all of that. Unfortunately, a lot of thought process with the races and such as why, a lot of reason why, sadly, O.J. Simpson was let off and a lot of people were cheering and such. But I would have liked to have seen O.J. Simpson be found not guilty because of real information being brought up. And being brought up, and also the fact that the LAPD botched the case so badly, it was embarrassing, that he probably would have got off anyway, you'd think, even without the court of public opinion, and that's kind of the whole thing. A lot of people want to come up and dismiss any conversation that there could have been a different killer and that it's all just a sick joke, this and that. So roll your eyes as you will, but open your mind. That's what I'm asking you to do today. Open your mind to information you probably haven't heard. Because again, like I said earlier, 90 to 99% of you have not heard this information before because it's either been covered up or people have dismissed it one way or another. People in the media dismiss it, this and that. Obviously, Bill Deere was brought on one of those shows on Discovery Channel, Discovery ID, and all that. They listened, and then they dismissed him at the end. And it's just like, really, it was extremely frustrating. Like the same BS you're going to hear, which is often, again, dare I say, to make it more political than I should, the liberal media. They tend to dismiss anything that isn't the 100% the official story, be it 9/11, be it John F. Kennedy, be it O.J. Simpson, be it anything else pretty much, be it the Oklahoma City bombing. One thing after another. One thing I don't believe in is the flat earth, so don't worry, I'm not a flat earther, and no, I do not have a tinfoil hat either. I have way too many sports caps. Okay, so if you want to talk about hats and such, maybe a fedora as well. I'd like to wear a fedora more often maybe than I should, but no, because I like the whole thought of being a detective like, well, Bill Deere, William Deere, Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which of course kind of gives you that O.J. Simpson vibe as well, the O.J. case and such. Who framed O.J. Simpson? Well, O.J. Simpson wasn't framed. He kind of sort of unintentionally framed himself. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Matlock case where a murder occurred, and maybe in some cases you know who the murderer is, maybe you don't, but you absolutely know the victim. There was a back and forth history with you and the victim, where, there's a back and forth history with you and the victim. Maybe like things weren't going so well, right? As things weren't going so well with O.J. and Nicole for an extended period of time. And, there was this terrifying call into the police. I'm scared of him. It's terrifying, and this and that. So there's history. There it is. There's history. You can hear it and this and that. O.J. yelling at her or whatever, open the damn door or whatever the heck he said. God only knows. I mean, it's old information. But, it's information that can point the finger to this man. As the case happens, a murder occurs. The person comes right after the murder, not long after, gets blood on their shoes, possibly on their hands and such, enough to say, oh, well, there's some blood. And then, oh my God, what's happened here? Oh my God, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Obviously, he went there for a reason because he had a pretty good idea what had happened. Or a pretty good idea there was an altercation with a certain somebody very close to O.J. Simpson, that I'm going to get into shortly, that led to this whole situation. That led to the whole situation, but getting the shoes contaminated, this and that, getting in your vehicle and driving away, getting out of there. Somebody sees you driving away, which a lady named Jill saw O.J. driving away at the around that time in the white Bronco. Now, there's two different white Broncos. O.J. had one, and his friend did as well, the one in the famous or infamous slow speed chase, which was weird and pointless, and makes you wonder what the heck the point of that all was. But the slow speed chase, what's the point? I have no idea other than to draw attention to himself versus the real killer. Yeah, there's so many reasons why the real killer has been hidden for so long, and pretty good chance O.J. was a part of it. Now, continuing, what took place again, some blood in the Bronco, and then immediately Van Etter, Tom Lang. Oh my God, he did do it. There's a little blood on the there's blood on the door handle. Oh my God! And then one of the gloves was left at the crime scene and such. A glove that was not used in the actual murder, but possibly like him going there and, you know, running into the wrong situation. This and that, because I don't think it was a premeditated killer. It was a rage killing. Somebody who lost their mind, snapped. That's who it was. Somebody that snapped. Premeditated murders don't look like that, do they? Premeditated murders are like sneaky. Somebody coming up from behind, you know, and shooting. So this and that. So there's going to be pieces and pieces of information coming in at the end of the day. But again, open your mind to the possibility that OJ may have covered up for somebody very close to him. And that person may have been the very person that was running after his car during the slow, or at the end of the slow speed chase, and came up to him. Why would this individual run that fast towards OJ Simpson and freak out as much as he did? Why would that happen? Because maybe, just maybe, this person may have been involved in the whole entire thing and didn't want OJ to take the fall, even though it was kind of like too little too late. He was gonna be convicted by the court of public opinion one way or another, even if he does get let off by a jury because of the whole stupid race war, thanks to Mark Fuhrman. Thank you very much, Mark Fuhrman, for that. But at the end of the day, as this first person, this person was very close to him, the person that ran up to him freaking out, and the police had to stop him from getting to OJ, was Jason Simpson. Jason Lamar Simpson, his son. This person, indeed, was also, so to get things started, basically in a lot of ways, a very important piece of information, according to Ken Bill Deere. Again, he was a renowned private eye who wrote 2 books in 2001 and 2012, presenting a much different case than the public opinion may have. Okay, so the first one was OJ is guilty, but not of murder. So it could be obstruction of justice. In 2012, it was kind of like that book was sandwiched into a lot of other information, as he had, you know, piled up a bunch of other stuff in 2011 that we're going to talk about both a bit. And that one was called OJ is Innocent and I Can Prove It. I'm surprised it was 2012. I thought it was 2016, but gosh, it's been that long already. So Bill Deere has been a private eye forever. He's 86 years old. He's still not retired, even though he's super old now. The case ultimately was tarnished when it became a racial battle rather than an actual murder case after the Mark Fuhrman tape came out when he said, the only good N is a dead N. It ruined the whole case, and that's all people focused on instead of who actually committed the murders. Over the course of time, Bill Deere, William Deere, uncovered information that the day after the murders, OJ had retained a very high-ranking attorney, Carl Jones, who specialized in homicide, to represent his son, Jason Simpson. Why? Why indeed would O.J. Simpson want to retain a high-ranking attorney for Jason Simpson right after the murders? There had to be a reason, didn't there? Well, it turns out Jason Simpson was a mental case who had hair-trigger temper that could put him into a rage to a point that he would become instantly violent, insanely violent, often having a weapon or something, or just threatening people. When it comes to O.J. Simpson, he couldn't stand the sight of blood. He didn't even want to bait his own hook when fishing. If he wanted Nicole dead, he probably would have hired somebody or used a gun, perhaps. Jason Simpson was the opposite. He had become a chef who carried a bag of very sharp knives everywhere he went. Jason was always a disappointment to his father, not making it into football, and much preferred being a chef, actually like his grandfather, interestingly enough. Another interesting piece of information that came up that could, pair things here. Jason and OJ wore the same shoe size, so all the same shoe print sizes and such in the same area, so with the bloody prints and all that. There were several bloody fingerprints at the scene that were never identified, especially one really defined one on the white metal fence. There was a white metal fence bloody print that was never identified. Like, what the heck? What the heck, man? There was a situation where they put down a blanket over Nicole Simpson from the inside of the residence, way before they really secured the area. And it's like, and they'd gathered all the evidence and everything they needed, the samples and such. Like, what were you thinking? So that'll contaminate a crime scene right away. They really botched things up. Way back at the beginning of the case, there were rumors of multiple people of ethnic background running into a black Jeep from the Brentwood residence. Jason had a black Jeep. It might have just been one person, one way or another, but a black Jeep leaving the scene of the crime. Jason Simpson had a black Jeep. It's very prominent that he had a black Jeep. In fact, to a point that Bill Deere, many years later, had acquired that very black Jeep. Interesting. Jason attacked his former employee, that would be Goldberg. He was, again, like at a restaurant and such. In 1992, he was stopped, thankfully, but he attacked his former employer, kind of an arrogant jerk. He didn't want to pay Jason this and that, for whatever reason. He was arrogant with Bill Deere as well when questioned and commented and stuff. Kept asking him, were you attacked with a knife? And he said yes. So Jason Simpson had attacked his former employer, Goldberg, with a knife. Thankfully was stopped, of course, before anything crazy happened. Jason attacked his former girlfriend, Jackie, with a knife, chopping her hair off in the process, throwing her into a bathtub. Actually, I believe it was Jennifer, so I might be getting this incorrect. But Jennifer, he actually chopped her hair off in the process when he accused her of cheating on him. Jackie, same thing, threw her into a bathtub. So again, chopping hair off, using a knife, using one of his chef's knives to do that. So you don't chop girls' hairs off. You just don't do that. I mean, if you're even slightly normal. This is not a normal person at all. It's like using knives like as if they're toys. Just little babies' toys. Yeah, or, I don't know, taking a piece of bubble gum out of your mouth and putting it on somebody's head or something. Yeah, disgusting, but not violent. Just disgusting, nasty, this and that. Or just playing with a little baby toy, like a little rubber sword. I'll get you, Jennifer Green, or Jackie, which was the other girlfriend. As for motive, did Jason Simpson have a motive? Yes. On the night of the murders, Nicole, OJ, and the family were all going to eat at his restaurant, Jackson's, the Jackson's Cafe. It would have been for the first time. It would have been the first time, Jason Simpson's chance to finally shine, where OJ liked to shine on the football field, be a superstar with the Buffalo Bills, and much later, a old, grizzled veteran with the San Francisco 49ers, which is closer to where he's from and all that. Ultimately winding up in Los Angeles, O.J. Simpson, of course. Jackson's Cafe, it was Jason's time to shine. But then Nicole canceled it. There was no conversation. Jason finally called her up, asking, okay, so how many people will be coming, this and that, something along those lines. And Jason's like, oh, well, we're not, Nicole was basically like, oh, well, we're not coming. We're going to wind up going to the Mezzalina where Ron Goldman, the waiter, was her friend and all that. Yeah, they're just going to go there. It's not as expensive as Jackson's. So it was just kind of like, what the heck? She was pretty much cold about it, like, we're not coming. And it's also, I believe that maybe OJ and Nicole weren't really getting along so hot. Like, we don't really want to do this. Nothing violent or anything, but we just don't want to do this. Jason was devastated and most likely enraged. He said it hurt and this and that. And he was probably like, and how would you feel if it was your opportunity to finally get to be the star of the show? You get to be the star chef. You get to cook for your whole family. This is your passion. Like, imagine this is my chance to do a great podcast in front of everybody, and then they're like, "Nah, sorry, we'd rather just do our own thing." At the last minute, though. Not 2 or 3 days before, which would still hurt a little bit, but at the last minute, and you called them, they didn't call you. That type of thing. Like, you had to call them first. Like, okay, so what's going on? That type of thing. That would piss you off, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that piss you off? It might seem like a lame reasoning, but that doesn't mean that things didn't escalate when a certain son of O.J. Simpson visited. Not that I'm really laughing, but a certain young man named Jason Simpson visited the Brentwood residence where Nicole was. Also, apparently, both of her and O.J.'s children were there as well. So, yeah, interesting when you think about that as well. Where O.J. Simpson, Bill Deere continues to say, why would O.J. Simpson do anything like that with his kids there, little kids there, murder their mother right there with the kids there? So it's also a thing in question where Jason Simpson was not in a different, he was in a different state of mind than most people might be. So that's a potential motive. It absolutely is a potential motive for something to happen, especially somebody standing him up, especially a woman. And the thought is that he confronted her. She kind of was cold and hard back to him, like, get out of here, I don't care, leave us alone, get over it and move on. And then he's like, no, basically, and who knows what may have escalated after that. Jason also had opportunity in terms of, like, he had the opportunity to be there at the time. The alibi that was presented that he was busy cooking in front of 200 people at Jackson's restaurant, Jackson's Cafe. Jackson's Cafe did not have the ability to serve 200 people. It had the ability the capacity to serve around 80. It was a pretty small place, actually. Later on, there was a Jackson's Cafe that could serve 200 people, but it wasn't built until after the murders. It wasn't opened until after the murders. And where did Jackson get the money? Again, where did Jackson get the money from to open that much larger restaurant? I'll let you fill in the blank on the possibility of how that could have taken place. But as for Jason Simpson, the alibi the whole time, again, was that he was working in front of 200 people. But here's a fact. It was Sunday evening. And oftentimes, according to, Carlos Ramos, who was also a waiter at the same place at the same time as Jason Simpson working there, said basically that Sundays oftentimes were a lot slower than other days during the weekend and even close early. Absolutely crazy stuff when you think about that. He couldn't have gone, they're saying that he couldn't have gone to Brentwood, but again, June 12th, 1994 was a Sunday. Sundays are often slower than other nights, especially back in the early 90s. Yeah, back in the early 90s, people would kind of be at home on Sundays oftentimes. That's just kind of how things were. Still now, but even more so then. Jason and his girlfriend, Jennifer Green, left the restaurant around 9:30, according to waiter Carlos Ramos. So Jason and his girlfriend, Green. It turned out that Jason would have had time to get to Brentwood, commit the murders, and escape. The men on a TV show on ID Channel tried to debunk Bill Deere's case that Jason couldn't have made it to Brentwood in the allotted time. To their surprise, they made it. Yet they still discredited Deere. What a shame. They still discredit him. See, here's the thing. They're saying, well, we had to drive through a bunch of, we had to drive through red lights and such a bit to make it on time, but we did. We had to drive kind of crazy. Now think about this. Do you think Jason Simpson was driving all casually and quietly on a Sunday evening to go say, hi Nicole, how's it going? Or do you think he was like, that blankety blank, I'm going to tell her how I really feel. I've had enough of this crap. You're not going to stand me up like that. I mean, that was wrong. That was absolutely unfair. I'm going to show you, I'm going to have a conversation. I mean, that was not cool. He was most likely driving like a maniac, going through red lights and such. Jason Simpson was not a normal guy. He was not a nice person. Then again, he could be. He had a Jekyll and Hyde type of deal. Jason Simpson was bipolar and was off his medicine, which is called F.O.T at the time, and told his doctor that he was about to rage. So yeah, he was kind of getting off of it and he was about to rage. It was around that time. The amount of blood in OJ's Bronco, so back to OJ here, sorry if we're kind of going back and forth between the two, was limited. That more than likely he had come to the scene afterwards and he'd gotten blood in the car, but very little. So more than likely he had gotten to the scene afterwards. Again, like a Matlock case. The murder had occurred. O.J. Simpson was like there later on, maybe like, oh God, what's happened here? What's happened? And then when he touched Nicole, maybe tried to see what's going on. If she's there's still a chance, maybe she could still be alive. And her head was basically severed from her body, just about. And he left in shock and dropped a glove and got some blood in the Bronco. Some blood in the Bronco. So here's the thing. It can't be both ways. Either O.J. Simpson had completely cleaned himself off and there's no blood at all, somehow, some way before getting in the Bronco. Like, how would that happen? Or he'd be completely covered in blood because he had committed murders of this type of level, this type of brutality, this type of goriness. Enter term of just absolutely nasty, disgusting, bloody murder. This is not a clean little thing, not at all. So everyone so quickly said he did it, like, oh my God, again, like a Matlock case. There it is, and he was there. The lady saw him driving out in his Bronco. The lady Jill saw him driving out in the Bronco. Has to be. And the blood on OJ's socks contained a chemical called EDTA, a substance contained in a vial of blood, like, say, blood samples. Yes, it was Nicole's blood, but it had EDTA in it. Now, how did blood with EDTA wind up in OJ's bloody socks in his house? How did that happen? More than likely, Phil Van Natter, who had the blood vial, had added a few drops of that blood into the socks to have blood on the socks to try to point the finger, to literally point all the fingers towards O.J. Simpson. Because, we got him anyway. That was kind of his point of view, more than likely. I don't think it was necessarily meant as a frame, but let's wrap this up. Let's make this more obvious. So, we know he did it. He's not going to get away with it, and this will really put things, in place. Get the gears turning, so to speak, put things in motion to convict O.J. Simpson to have an open and shut case. He absolutely damn did it. That's basically Phil Van Natter's point of view. But, obviously this was not brought up by anybody in the case. And also the motion of the blood as well. The direction of the blood wouldn't make scientific sense if, say, he had committed murders and got blood on his socks. Clearly the blood appeared as if it had been poured through the sock. Like, how did it get here and here? It didn't make any sense. So that's kind of the thing. His foot would be in the way, right? How did it get all the way through the sock? It didn't make sense. So, it just didn't. The exact position of it, this and that. So, yeah, this and that. I apologize for sounding so crappy with that. But Tom Lang and Phil Van Natter were so convinced it was O.J. Simpson that quite possibly that's what Phil Van Natter did. He's the one who had the vial. The vial was emptier than it was when he had acquired it. When he had returned it, it was slightly emptier. I believe it was 0.5 ounces less. That's what Bill Deere mentioned in the documentary on YouTube and such. So, again, this is the kind of stuff. It might be like, okay, why are you just talking about Bill's documentary and Bill's books and such? Well, it's not necessarily about that. It's a fact of the matter of people out there see this, or maybe they either see this or don't see this. Like they just don't see it because it's covered up, or just because they want to come in with a closed mind. OJ did it. I'm not even going to waste my time. Well, maybe you should open your mind a little bit. Maybe you should. Maybe you should. Also, again, something in the books and such. Bill Deere had contacted 2 British private investigators to look at the autopsy images and data. Not data. It's still data. I don't know why people are saying data now. Maybe that's whatever the heck it's called, the Mandela effect or something. Everybody's saying data now. That more than likely one knife was used in the murders. Who had more than one knife? Jason Simpson. Why? Because he was a chef who always had his chef bags, or bag of, he had a chef bag, yep. His bag of chef knives with him all the time. And that's, again, what Ramos talked about as well. He always had it with him. It was his pride and joy. Pride and joy. It would have been absolutely crazy. See, and also, again, the size. Yeah, they were talking about the size and range of the wounds on the victims, that these had to have been done with chef's knives. They'd come up with that conclusion. Not some little stiletto thing that God knows the thing might have broken in the battle. It was a nice Swiss Army knife type of a knife, a good one and everything. O.J. Simpson's not going to buy some cheap thing that's going to break in 5 seconds. But more than likely, a Swiss Army knife isn't going to do that much damage, especially against somebody with a black belt in karate, which Ron Goldman had. He was an incredibly good karate fighter. The killer would have been beat to hell after the murders. Ron Goldman, again, like I said, was a black belt. And the wounds on Ron Goldman's legs show that he had made a lot of contact with the killer. Many kicks landed. Also, his shoes, like the bottom of his shoes, had several knife cuts on them. They were cut with a knife at the bottom, meaning he had landed a blow many times on the killer. Also, again, Ron Goldman had several bruises and gashes all over his hands, showing that he had made contact with the killer several times. Again, I'll say this for the 3rd or 4th or 15th or 16th time, Ron Goldman was a black belt. Black belts are not pushovers, even if you have a knife. Now, at the end of the day, somebody with a weapon versus somebody without a weapon has a major advantage, even if the person's a black belt. But that doesn't mean the person with the black belt isn't going to land several blows and leave the killer badly beaten up. I mean, beat to hell at the end of the day. So there's no way that the killer would have come out of there without several injuries of some kind. Maybe, I mean, who knows? Dare we say a broken finger or something? Maybe not anything like that, but probably at least several bruises, maybe a gash or two as well. Quite possibly. So just a few days after the murders, right afterward, O.J. Simpson was stripped down to his underwear in images. And I still remember this at the time. Back in 1994, June of 1994, having just graduated from 8th grade going into 9th grade. I was that young. Believe it or not, about to turn 15 years old in July. So in June of 94, I was like, well, that's weird. That's weird. After all that, there's nothing. It was literally just like a normal day. A man who had just been living a normal life, stripped down to his underwear, maybe at the gym at Northwest Racket Swim and Health Club, as we called it back then. It merged with Lifetime Fitness and became Lifetime Fitness years later. So that's what took place in that case. But yeah, it looked like somebody at, Lifetime Fitness, whatever, just kind of standing in front of a mirror, maybe you're going to shower or you just finished a shower, something like that. No wounds, no bruises, nothing. And I remember thinking well, that's interesting. He didn't do it? No, I don't believe he did, my lord. Very crazy to think about at the end of the day. I mean, I remember just being in stunned silence, staring at the TV screen, way back in June 1994. Many years later, about 2000, so we're shifting back to 2000, the year 2000, not 2,000 years later, in Florida, where Jason had moved towards, he had a storage locker that he had rented for a period of time, but had failed to pay rent. So the items inside the storage locker were auctioned off, and eventually Bill Deere was able to acquire them. There was a box inside the storage locker that contained a lot of items, including a bunch of pictures found in that box that Jason had rented, of course. There were pictures of Jason wearing a very similar black stocking cap that was found at the crime scene. In the pictures of Jason wearing that black cap, there were dates showing that they were taken prior to the murders. In the pictures after the murders, Jason was wearing a light gray cap. Again, kind of a Ben Matlock type of thing again, where you just look at, and I know Matlock is fiction, but at the same time, there's some reality to fiction. I mean, where do you come up with a fictional story with not some type of reality to it? Like, okay, so here you had this, but then all of a sudden that was not there anymore afterward. I mean, it's just another piece of evidence. It's another piece. A very sharp boot knife was also found at the very bottom of the box, underneath a lot of other items, including diaries, including something very creepy that I didn't talk about earlier, the death certificate of his little sister. And the little sister had drowned in the pool when Jason was only 10 years old. Jason was supposed to be watching his sister, and again, as just a 10-year-old, he just wasn't paying attention for a split second, and that little baby sister fell and drowned in the pool. And very, very sad story, of course. But the fact that he kept that death certificate in the box, so as if it had been torturing him his whole life, and in a lot of ways, that traumatic event may have led to the bipolar syndrome and a lot of the other possible, dare we say, psychotic natures that Jason may have developed over the course of time. Psychologic natures. I apologize. I was looking for the word. But the psychologic difficulties that Jason Simpson had dealt with for most of his life may have started around that one traumatic event. I mean, because, how guilty and terrible would you feel when something like that can happen? And around that time, actually, that event also led to the eventual breakup and divorce of Jason's mom and, of course, O.J. Simpson, his father. And then ultimately, O.J. many years later, would get with a young, beautiful, much younger lady named Nicole Simpson, and all of that. But all of these events kind of led to further and further problems. And it's kind of creepy and scary and sad. But the fact that he kept that death certificate in the box, and it's weird to think that he'd also failed to pay rent and all that, just not paying attention. Maybe his mind was literally somewhere else on other things. And I can only imagine the possibility of him actually committing these murders, that his mind just isn't going to be right anymore. There was even talk about other people that always saw that the Jekyll and Hyde side of Jason, and he even called himself Jekyll and Hyde in those diaries. He called himself Jekyll and Hyde, and he's tired of Jekyll and Hyde. He's tired of it. But in the past, people that knew him, friends, associates, and such, said that he has this good side, like he could be a nice guy, whatever, and then he'd always have this dark side. And then after the murders, it seemed as if the dark side had kind of taken over him. Well, interesting thought as well. Crazy. But the talk is, again, scientifically, with the measurements and such of the knife, including a very important part of the knife, the butt of the knife, the handle, that part, measured pretty much exactly, measured right where you need it to be for the in the autopsy evidence on the top of Nicole's head, where the blow to the head may have taken place. It could have been a chef's knife as well, but it could have been that very boot knife as also. But talk is that there were multiple knives used in this murder. That this knife could have possibly done most of the damage, or it could have done later damage. Who knows? We don't know exactly timing, who did what and when, which murder took place first, what event took place. I can imagine the possibility that one of the knives was lost temporarily during the fight with Ron Goldman, because that was much more dramatic. Maybe like Nicole was hit in the head hard and rendered possibly unconscious, or mostly unconscious, with that pretty harsh blow to the head that caused gashing. Gashing is when something's hit so hard it breaks the skin. Just by hit, blunt force, not by cutting with a sharp object. So that's obviously a major, major thing to think about. But again, during the fight with Ron Goldman, of course, there's a strong possibility that a knife may have been lost. Perhaps that may have been why O.J. Simpson may have arrived at the crime scene at some point, and he may have obviously saw Nicole and what happened to her, but also went to retrieve Jason's knife, which would have which would have nailed him. Basically, that would have pretty much had him convicted of the murder. So it would have pointed all the fingers at Jason Simpson, which would have been the correct thing all along. The case would have been ended much quicker that way, instead of just OJ, which is unfortunately what a lot of these people seem to have wanted because of the high-profile situation of it. Again, like I said, the box was acquired because Jason had failed to pay rent on the storage unit, and the box was auctioned off. Other weird things that were talked about, again, in the... So on YouTube, it's called The Overlooked Suspect, and you could probably look it up and such. The Overlooked Suspect in the OJ case, and again, that's Jason Simpson, of course. So yes, highly recommend it. I did post a link to it on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Freedom of Thought 1776. It's not the best link I've ever seen, but if you can get there, great. If not, please let me know. Highly recommend you watch it if you're interested. You can get pretty much everything. And of course, OJ is guilty but not of murder, William Deere, or OJ is innocent and I can prove it, William Deere. I first heard about William Deere in that first book way back in 2001. I believe it was May of 2001, a beautiful day. I was out cutting grass, listening to live radio with the, like the earmuffs, ear protection so you can hear it despite the fact you're cutting grass. Way back in 2001, I had to have been 22 or about to turn 22. I was 21 maybe at the time because it wasn't my birthday yet in July. Man, way back in the day, all of a sudden, Dan Barrero, who I was listening to at the time, had this guest on that said he may have a very interesting twist here to the OJ case that may paint a picture to a very different scenario. And I just listened in awe and kept thinking about Jackson's Cafe and all that, and it just was on my mind like, oh, it was supposed to be busy, but it really wasn't. And then it was a chef. Jason was a chef. He had a violent temper. He had a nature of a Jekyll and Hyde personality. He had all those knives on the night of the murder. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, it was like right away, I have to get this book as soon as possible. And I did. I forget if I got it off of Amazon or right off the actual webpage, but I mean, I had to get it. And back then, Google, I don't know if Google already existed. It probably did. But it would be like in its early days. It might have been Yahoo or whatever. I forget exactly how I found it, but maybe it was just the webpage itself. Because back then, I was actually listening to live radio rather than podcasting things, so you can't back up. But I must have done something, maybe looked up the guy's name and then found the book. Amazon, I believe, Amazon absolutely existed then. I may have got it off there because Amazon, even back in those days, was the most reliable place to get a book. In fact, that's why Amazon existed back then, was to buy books. It wasn't necessarily to buy everything. You could buy anything like a laser. You could buy soap. You could buy, you could buy a lamp like I'm looking at right now. You could buy a laptop like I'm using. You could buy the microphone, which needs a new stand. It's damaged. Yes, I've talked about that before. But I had to get the book, and then I just couldn't put it down. I'd probably read it about 5 or 6 times, and then the OJ is innocent, and I can prove it. I read that one once because it was like, it's like the OJ is guilty of not of murder is like the first X amount of pages, and then the added evidence later on, like obviously this knife that was found, the further on stuff like past 2002, 2003, 2004, all the way up to 2012-ish, all this other things that took place, like the acquisition of Jason's black Jeep, and weird things that were going on as well in Florida when Jason was living in Florida. and still had the black Jeep. Every time it rained, he would make sure that the top was opened on that Jeep. The sunroof was open so it would rain inside the Jeep. Pretty weird, as if he's trying to, I don't know, wash away something, which ended up being exactly what took place. Like, very possible. When they used luminol after Bill Deere had acquired the black Jeep, there were 7 hot spots, but it's like everything was so kind of diluted down over the course of, what it had been 9 years at the time, because it was 94 to what must have been 2003. Things were watered down to a point that they couldn't really prove anything, like it was exact, like whose blood it was. But 7 hot spots? That's a lot. So probably a lot more than what OJ had in the Bronco. Also, the center panel in the Jeep was literally cut off, was like cut open. Like the top of it was cut open, and pretty much like a pretty big hole was dug, which looked like with a knife, to kind of cut it open, as if maybe there's been a lot of blood evidence there. And odds are there probably was blood evidence, possibly, probably. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you need to cut open like the center panel on your Jeep, unless like you're trying to remove something? So pretty weird. And obviously he didn't probably want anybody to acquire the Jeep. But by the time the Jeep was acquired, a lot of the evidence had been watered down, again, by conveniently leaving the Jeep open, specifically during the rain. He made sure it was open, and then when the rain would stop, he'd close it. Like, don't you think that's weird? Do you think that's a coincidence? A little bit weird. So things like that, very strange, very fascinating, and all of that. So again, I've made sure to cite Bill Deere, William Deere, a million times here. I'm not trying to steal his information. Obviously, I was not the private investigator here. It was him. I'm just passing on the information to you, because this information's not getting out there. This information's being hidden. This information's being dismissed. And the LAPD continues to dismiss and ignore, and, OJ committed the murders. The jury found him not guilty. The case is closed, go away. So, no, the case is not closed. They're just like, he killed them, but the jury let him off. Well, maybe he didn't kill them, and maybe he did commit a crime, which was obstruction of justice. And there is a real killer out there. But there was no effort, he's saying he's going to find the real killer and all that, but no effort was done to find the real killer, because he knew who the killer was, and he didn't want the police to find the real killer, because the real killer very possibly is Jason Lamar Simpson. When Jason was addressed about finding the real killer, he's like, no, I never committed to any of that. I'm not, I don't give a bleep about finding any real killer. Well, why is that? You wouldn't want to find the real killer, huh? You're just like, no, I haven't committed to anything for that. Or, I haven't pledged anything. That's what his words were. And it was a pretty aggressive response as well. Like, as if this sounds like somebody that doesn't want the information out, right? Doesn't want any new information found. Would much rather things are left as they are. Jason's off or OJ's off, and that's it. Further investigation. What are you talking about? What for? But if OJ didn't do it, who did? I don't know. Go away. Leave me alone. That was pretty much the response. Pretty much. Think about it. Sounds like something somebody would say if they didn't want the information to be found. And why would they not want the information to be found? Because the evidence points to them. No. Or to somebody they know very closely. Like if it's OJ, somebody they know and don't want to be caught. So, sounds pretty fishy to me. The time card also, again, you'll hear about, was handwritten. When it's an electronic time card, even back in those days, electronic time cards existed. Yes, they did. Everything was electronic except June 12th. And it showed he got off at 10:30, when Jennifer Green and Jason, both in their dispositions much earlier in time, said said that he left work at 9:30 because they didn't think it mattered really. Everything's pointing at OJ anyway, so on and so forth. Also the fact that, later on the time card was altered and handwritten only for that one day, though. Only for that one day, 10:30. He got off at 10:30, but there were no customers there from about 9 on, right? 9 to 9:30 at the latest, but 9 on. Pretty much there was nobody there. It might have even been earlier. It was a very slow night. It was, and all the big plans that were going to be taking place that day. Well, funny, those plans were canceled, and that may have been the root of the extreme frustration and anger that may have ultimately led to the murders of Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. Pretty wild, pretty crazy. What do you think? What do you think? Have I presented have I presented enough information for you to at least have an open mind on this? Or are you going to just outright dismiss this? Because I think if you're going to outright dismiss it, I don't know. This is not conspiracy theory stuff here. This is evidence. This is real. This is a real private investigator with real people listening to it and acknowledging what's really happening here. This is really amazing stuff. Dr. Henry Lee, one of the most fascinating forensic evidence investigators in the history of the planet. The most, you've probably ever seen, the most established there are, like blood splatter evidence and such. Dr. Henry Lee, yeah, this is not a joke here. This is not some random person who wants to follow conspiracy theories. So, yep, bottom line, these are not just random people. This is the real thing. Other investigators all over the country, the world, and such, really like saying, hey, to dismiss this evidence is a huge mistake. You're making a big mistake. Henry Lee in the past and currently also was saying, yeah, there's not enough blood evidence in the Bronco to say to say O.J. Simpson committed the murders. All it says is he was at the scene at some point, probably not long afterward. My mom believes that O.J. finished things off. That's just my mom's opinion, my mom's belief. I kind of think it was, again, more of a Matlock type of deal. The murders were committed very shortly before, and then O.J. Simpson showed up maybe to retrieve Jason's knife. That could be, that's my theory, that Jason may have lost a knife in the battle. Maybe that one, maybe multiple knives, that he retrieved them somehow. I don't know why that other one, but I'm guessing it was a different knife that was lost in the fight. That's my guess. It's just a theory, but it was lost in the fight. At some point, one of the knives was lost in the fight. Maybe O.J. had retrieved it and put it in this bag that other items, including O.J.'s shoes and such, were thrown during the limousine ride to the airport. So certain items may have been thrown in that bag, from that bag into the, at some point, who knows, a dumpster or God knows where, or thrown out the window at one point, where O.J. randomly opened up the window as they were driving possibly by a bridge or something, and that may be why those items were never found. So weird, crazy. He wouldn't let anybody touch the little gym bag. So interesting. Now that part could implicate O.J. Simpson as well, but obviously one way or another, yes, O.J. was guilty, but not of murder. Obstruction of justice, absolutely. He could have still served time, but well, nothing can be done with O.J. now. He is facing God. He's facing destiny. There's nothing we can do. We can't even pray for him anymore. His fate is sealed. If he's in heaven, he repented and all that, God bless him. If not, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say, if he's destined for hell, it is what it is. You don't want to root for anybody to go to hell. You just don't. And again, if he didn't commit the murders, but it covered up, obviously he should have served time for that. But he served time for being pretty much an idiot later on. With the whole, was it trying to armed robbery of a place, trying to get some of his Hall of Fame items back or something, and then he winds up serving 9 years in prison, which is really weird and crazy. That was just stupid. But O.J. pretty much had become a mental case himself, I'd have to say. When you listen to him talk and such, not even close to the same person. Not the smooth talking, sweetness type of a guy. A sweet personality, nice type of a guy, smooth individual that he was when he was around, and one of the like an actor, or of course part of the NFL media and such, keeping up with games and all that, and obviously hoping the best for his former club, the Buffalo Bills, against the Dallas Cowboys in the Super Bowl, stuff like that. That's when I was seeing OJ, and I was like, that's a nice guy, that's a nice guy. And then you find out, oh, no way. Yeah, he was like this kind of gentleman of a man. And then it turns out he really kind of wasn't, obviously. He was abusive to his son, verbally, physically, this and that, because Jason was a huge disappointment, massive disappointment to him. Not a good enough athlete to get to the NFL, and just didn't care about football that much. And Jason wanted to see, or OJ wanted to see Jason become a star just like him. And oftentimes parents want that, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. Like say like a star athlete, maybe LeBron and Bronny. We'll see how that turns out. Bronny James, who might be entering the draft here, coming up soon. As for LeBron James, whatever. Hopefully nothing bad happens with them. It's just crazy. All these LA figures, the weird things that can happen. You know, actors, athletes, whatever. Like Kobe Bryant dying in a helicopter crash in January 2020. Just crazy. Died in a helicopter crash. Isn't that just weird? How crazy things can happen. And very sad, of course, as well. But again, this is all very sad. And it's a sad ending to see O.J. Simpson die of prostate cancer. But, you know, and how we're still kind of sitting here, America and the world, but America by public opinion, still would probably be like 90%, over 90% saying O.J. Simpson did it. And he was just let off because of the whole, you know, the whole race war thing and the Rodney King deal and all of that. And then the other side, you know, of the equation, that the only reason why they'd say he's not guilty is because the cops just wanted to convict him because he's black and this and that and race. Nope, I think people like Van Etter wanted to convict him because they wanted to win. And they simply wanted to win. They thought he had done it, and they wanted to make sure that they put him away. They were, unfortunately, short-sighted and closed-minded coming into the case, thinking, you know, they didn't want this high-profile guy to get away with murder because he had to have done it. Look at this. This points to him. That points to him. Blah, blah, blah. He was there. Their blood's in the car. The bloody socks. But now let's make sure these socks are even bloodier. Or no, let's just make sure the socks are bloody. Even bloodier. Let's make sure that now he has bloody socks to go with it. So not only was he there, but he did it, you know, because the blood splattered on his socks, when the reality was not that. Just a small amount of blood evidence in the car and on the door handle of his car because he'd probably touched Nicole Simpson. Scary stuff. Absolutely scary stuff at the end of the day. So, yeah, I mean, that's, again, I've presented to you what I believe is interesting, and I really hope it's interesting for you as well. Again, I apologize if you think, oh gosh, more OJ. Oh, you know, like say if you're like 40 years old, whatever, you know, maybe late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you heard so much about the OJ case and you got sick and tired of it back in the day, and then all these books that come out, you know, evidence dismissed, you know, OJ did it, but everybody just dismissed it because of this and that, you know, because of race, this, or just he's popular, that. Again, so at the time that how dare you dismiss this evidence and all that, and then there's the other side, you know, like the cops were racist, they just wanted to convict a black man, but then there's open-minded people like Bill Deere that wanted to come down to the brass tacks here and find what really happened. Like, was it really OJ, or was it somebody close to OJ? Was it somebody close to OJ that caused all this, sadness and craziness? And would it be somebody that OJ would be possibly willing to cover for? All of that is yes, at the end of the day. I mean, I strongly believe that. And, well, I encourage you to have an open mind. You have a right to your opinion. If you'd like to interact with me on this, please do. Facebook.com/freedom of thought 1776, paladinolive@yahoo.com, Instagram, freedom_of_thought 1776. Instagram, yep, great to hear from you there. Twitter account @freedomofthou, @freedomofthou76, pardon me. That's the other one. There's the Gettr account that I've got that thing going again. I'd almost kind of forgotten about it, the poor thing. It was inactive forever. All of this is in the show description. Now, Twitter, of course, is X. Gettr is @freethought7679. It's kind of weird because 79 is when I was born. But again, all of this is in the show description. All of it. So please do interact with me if you could. Let me know how you feel about this. Do you think it's real? Maybe look up Bill Deere. email him if you want to. Email him, interact, whatever. Say, yeah, I mean, I stand with you on this. I'm sure he could use some encouragement and all of that. Obviously, 86 years old, and he has mentioned that retirement is nowhere in his sight. So pretty cool to think about that. He's still an active private investigator at age 86. Pretty remarkable. He solved some amazing cases in the past. And one of the people that he convicted as a hitman that spent 21 years in prison left a message. This is at the end of the video. It's pretty remarkable. Left a message to the killer of Nicole Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman that Bill Deere doesn't give up. He got me, and he'll get you too. So pretty fascinating that he would be willing to do that. Somebody that Bill Deere followed as long as he did. I guess it's like a mutual respect type of thing. Like it was a respect type of thing. Like he's not going to give up. He's going to get you just like he got me. And pretty amazing. That was really something. A hitman, I believe it was like something like a Milo case, it was called. A famous case in about 1980. So obviously Bill Deere goes way back in the day. He's been active about 60 years, I believe, as a private investigator, which is incredible. Highly recommend the books. Maybe you want to read. Maybe you want to get them off Amazon. They're there. They're on Amazon. OJ is guilty but not of murder, or OJ is innocent and I can prove it. Of course, again, the video, the overlooked suspect in the OJ case. Yep. So look all that up if you can, and or if you're interested. And yeah, there it is. With that said, I, again, hope this is interesting information for you. I'd love to hear from you. Interact with me. I'd greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Something that has been on my mind forever. When I talked about 2001. Yeah. And, I was interested in the case before that. But, obviously it's like, he probably did it. But who knows? Maybe it was Jason. And I still remember hearing about Jason way back in the day. So when Bill Deere brought that up on Dan Barrero way back in May 2001 or early June, it was right around there. That wonderful time of year, late May, early June, around there, that OJ may have, or that Jason Simpson may have committed these murders, and all this evidence that points in his direction. I've been fascinated with the whole thing ever since. I'm as obsessed as Bill Deere is with the whole thing. It's like me too, in a lot of ways. And I've never talked about it once, all these years in the podcasting, because I figured, well, it's just not the right time or place. Purple Mafia, even though it's a football show, it's not a place to talk about OJ. Timberwolves Explosion is a basketball show, not a place to talk about OJ, Jason, all that stuff. Timberwolves Explosion, I mentioned that one. Purple Mafia, Brave the Wild, the hockey show, same thing. Then I came up with, obviously Video Game Flashback, it's a retro video game show. Nope. Showtime and T-Wolves. Nope. But then there's Freedom of Thought. And I'd kind of thinking politics, and then it's like, no, it can't be just politics. You got to get further into other things, biblical conversation, end times, and then it's like, oh man, giants and all that. The giants, maybe Bigfoot. I won't get as much into that right now, but the giants, the biblical history, all that fascinating stuff. And then it's like, wait a minute, how? I wanted to get into it, and then it's like I put it off. Thinking maybe someday I'll get into it, and then all of a sudden, O.J. Simpson dies of prostate cancer, and it's like, gotta do it, gotta do the O.J. show on Freedom of Thought, and there'll probably be future ones, and I probably should put some more effort. Like I've been talking about this for so long, just like putting things off. Busy schedule gets in the way. I'm afraid to interrupt any schedules and such. Because, oh boy, I got to do this. Oh boy, I got to do that. That's kind of been my kryptonite with my podcasting career. I'm just admitting that to you right here. I'm confessing that getting guests on the show, real guests. And you know what? All of you are real guests. Any of you come on, you're a real guest. And I think you'd help. Any of you. But just imagine if I got, by the grace of God, just imagine if I got Bill Deere on the show someday. Wouldn't that be something? If any of you could help with that, yeah. Like maybe you know him or know connections with him, that'd be great. Otherwise, maybe someday, I can imagine having an amazing conversation with him. A friend of mine dear friend of mine that I've known for many years, Dave Reinhardt, knows an awful lot about monoliths and giants and all that. A lot more than I thought he did. I'd like to have him on the show sometime. He's got a lot to say. Paul Tuniverse Caniff, Paul Caniff, dear friend I've known for many years, knows a lot about the Mandela effect. That's a show I've been talking about forever. That's just never happened. What are we, 80 episodes in now? And the show has been around it's been around since late 2020 now, like November 2020. So like 3.5 years, basically, approximately, or is this 4 years already? It's been around a while, and 80 episodes in. Some politics, some finance, like cryptocurrency conversation. It's fun. But then OJ, murder mysteries, unbelievable. Of course, talking about paranormal type things, on occasion as well. Like the Familiar Spirits episode during Memorial Weekend 2022, 2022. Fascinating conversation. I'm going to get deeper into that as well at times, because people should know the difference between ghosts, or people should know this whole ghost thing is really just familiar spirits. You're not talking to your grandma, you're not talking to your dad or whatever. You're talking to a familiar spirit imitating them, and that's evil. So there I go into all these other conversations, and I apologize, but this show is right here what Freedom of Thought is all about. This whole conversation about OJ and Jason Simpson, Nicole Brown, all of that. This is what Purple Mafia, this is what Freedom of Thought is all about. Free thinking, open-minded conversation about something very, very interesting. These are actual facts. These are not made up by some tinfoil hat, with satellite dishes in their trailer in New Mexico. This is real stuff here. So please take it seriously. And everybody does have a right to their opinion, but again, at least give it thought. Give it freedom of thought at the end of the day. See what I did there? I mean, and that's what it's all about. So please do give a positive rating of this show, if you could. 5-star rating, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you could do that, it just, would mean the world. If you want to write a review and have some things to say, please, and thank you in advance. It'd be great. But also, this show needs to get out there. This information needs to get out there. Tell your friends. Please tell your friends about this, especially this episode. Share it on social media. Whatever social media it is, share it. Please do. Tell your friends. Word of mouth. Like, this is some interesting stuff, right? I'd like to believe it is. And, well, if you want to check some of this other stuff out, the books, like I talked about, Bill Deere and such. I mean, you buying Bill Deere's books are not about helping me as much as about, obviously helping push this investigation in the right place. But also, again, it's just giving you a chance to learn something new. Open your mind and learn something new and think, whoa, this whole court of public opinion is BS 99% of the time, it seems like. It sure does. It sure does. So at the end of the day, again, if you could help with the algorithms of the show with positive ratings, that would be great. If you want to donate, more than welcome to. If you don't, it's a free country. You don't have to donate a penny. But if you want to, this microphone is this microphone stand. The microphone's okay, but it's up to you how you feel about the audio of this show. But the microphone stand is literally like on its, it needs help. It needs to be replaced, unless it miraculously can be repaired. I don't know about that. It's literally like, it needs to be like, the stand needs to be replaced, this type of thing. So if you want to help the show in other ways as well, again, the donation, it would help with anything, even if it's 99 cents if you want to donate. If you don't, again, it's a free country. You don't have to donate anything. I'm not expecting anything from anybody, but if you do, thank you in advance. With that said, take care, and God bless the United States of America, and let's bring closure to this case once and for all. Wouldn't that be something?